What is up, people of the internet, and welcome to a week in my life in UBC Electrical Engineering. My name is Avery, and I'm a second-year electrical engineering student at the University of British Columbia. And I'm going to share with you exactly what second-year electrical engineering is like at UBC. While my morning routine plays out in the background for a bit, here's a little bit of context into my academic life at the moment. I'm currently taking 6 courses right now, 2 of which are worth 4 credits and 1 that is worth 5 credits. Basically, that means that my week can get quite busy, especially with all the labs that I have for these courses, which, might I add, all happen to fall into 1 week, this week. So I'm definitely gonna have a fun week ahead of me. I'm also a commuter student with 8 a.m. classes 3 days a week, which partially explains why I wake up when some people go to bed. Today is Monday, and my Monday schedule looks like this. A Comp Sci 259 lecture at 8 a.m., Math 253 at 11 a.m., Math 256 at 12 p.m., and Philosophy 211 at 1 p.m. Believe it or not, this is the most relaxed day that I have in my entire week. Starting with Comp Sci 259, this is a course all about data structures and algorithms for electrical engineers, which has basically been an extension of App Sci 160 from first year engineering. So far, we've covered concepts such as pointers, structures, asymptotic analysis, and linked lists, all in the C programming language. In today's lecture, we start learning about stacks and queues and how to work with them in C. To be completely honest, I still have no idea what's going on in this course, which definitely shows in my recent lab quiz scores. Don't worry, everything's fine. After Comp Sci 259, I have a 2-hour gap until my next class, so my friends and I made the long trek across campus to Kerner Library to get some work done. In this 2-hour gap, I worked on a take-home assignment for our Comp Sci 259 lab assignment with my partner. These take-home assignments for Comp Sci are pretty much just a coding problem that we have to understand and solve with the concepts we've learned in the lectures. In this take-home assignment, it was related to DNA sequencing and finding matches of codons in long strings of DNA. And I really did not think that I'd ever see biology concepts in a computer science class, let alone engineering. Unfortunately, even though our code looked right, it was marked as wrong when we tried to get it auto-graded, so we're definitely going to need to work on that later. My next class was Math 253, which is a course about multivariable calculus and is hosted online through Zoom through this really cool transparent glass board that our professor uses to write notes on. I really want to see the studio setup someday. This course is pretty much just an extension of all the concepts from Math 100, 101, and 152 from first year. And so far, it has actually been pretty straightforward. I think it might be my highest mark at the moment, which is probably why I like the course so much. In today's lecture, we were covering the concepts of gradients and directional derivatives, which allows us to find tangent planes in 3 dimensions. I'm definitely enjoying this course right now, which is something that I cannot say for any of my other courses. Sticking on the topic of math, my next class right after Math 253 is Math 256, which is a course all about differential equations. You do a little bit of it in first year in Math 100 and 101, but you expand on it a lot in this course. In today's lecture, we started learning about linear systems of differential equations, and they definitely brought back bad memories from Math 152 when we had to find eigenvalues and eigenvectors again. I'm still recovering from that final exam. This course is pretty average in terms of excitement, but the exams have been very reminiscent of Math 152, specifically in my section. Too many questions and not enough time. After Math 256, I have my last class of the day, which is Philosophy 211, which is the Humanities and Social Sciences elective that I'm taking in order to graduate. This course is an introduction to Greek philosophy. Think people like Pythagoras, Socrates, Plato, and many other famous philosophers that I definitely did not pay attention to in class. Our professor spent the first 20 to 30 minutes of class answering questions related to our first essay, which is 1,500 words long and is due at the end of this week. And I have not even started yet, and I may or may not have finished it before the due date. Anyways, in today's lecture, we were introduced to Socrates, learning about his life and what he believed in. To be completely honest, I barely pay attention during the lectures, and this course is literally just a means to fulfill the arts credits that I need for engineering. And it was also the only course that could fit into my overly packed timetable, so I'm just pushing through it just so I won't have to think about an arts course ever again. Usually after all my classes are done on Mondays, I would stay on campus to get some extra work done, but today I headed straight home so I could work on my CPEN 211 lab assignment, which is due tomorrow, and I'll explain more about the course itself tomorrow as well. And if you haven't noticed already, my work ethic is questionable now compared to my work ethic from first year, or maybe it's just questionable in general. Anyways, for this lab assignment for CPEN 211, we were tasked with building a circuit that used sequential logic to turn on some LEDs. I'll save you the spiel of trying to understand how it actually works, because in reality, I barely understood how it was supposed to work, which was probably why it wasn't working as it was supposed to. Like, the stretches of time in this time lapse where I'm just staring at my breadboard were the times when I was wondering what the heck was wrong with my circuit. Working on this lab assignment pretty much took up my entire afternoon and into my evening as well, and at some point I just accepted my fate that this wasn't working as it was supposed to. What's even more frustrating was that I could explain everything that was supposed to happen with my diagrams and my truth tables, but something must have been messed up on my circuit board and I still don't know what the problem was. So after accepting my fate, I showered and then worked on this week's web work homework for Math 253. It technically wasn't due until next week, but it was the only thing that I understood how to do at the moment, which is why I chose to work on that instead of many other more important assignments, like my philosophy essay due at the end of the week that I still have not started yet. Anyways, after finishing my web work assignment, I went to bed at around 11 p.m. And if you thought that today was bad, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. It gets worse. Alright, today's Tuesday and my schedule for Tuesdays looks like this. An Elect 201 lecture at 10 a.m., my CPEN 211 lab session at 1 p.m., and a CPEN 211 lecture at 3:30. Even though I technically start at 10 a.m. today, I usually just like to leave as if I have an 8 a.m. class because A, the buses are much less busy at this time, and B, I like to use the extra 2 hours to just work on stuff. After I got to campus and dropped off my Elect toolkit in my locker, I worked on this week's web work assignment for Elect 201, which focused on using nodal and mesh analysis to solve circuits. I'll let this time lapse play out for a bit because the clouds looked really cool in the background. I got through about half of the questions in the assignment before it was time for me to head to my Elect 201 lecture, which is a course all about circuit analysis, which is a lot of resistors, capacitors, inductors, voltage, current, and many other elements that I still don't understand. I'm gonna be raw with all of you, circuits are not really my bread and butter, which definitely shows because I failed the first midterm for this course already. So yeah, an academic comeback is already in order from me. Anyways, in today's lecture, we started a new section of the course on electronics components, or rather, non-linear circuit elements. Our professor showed us an example of a vacuum tube in today's lecture, which apparently was the original design for the concept of a diode, which we then discussed. Usually there are more quantitative and computational concepts taught in these lectures, but because today was the start of the second half of the course per se, there was a lot more theory than normal. After Elect 201, I had a 1-hour gap before my CPEN 211 lab session, of which I was working on yesterday. How the labs work in CPEN 211 is that you work on the lab assignment as homework, and then you go to your lab session to get it marked by a TA. For this lab, I had to show and explain the logic optimization that I used for my circuit and demonstrate it on my breadboard. But as you may have remembered from yesterday, some of my state transitions were not cooperating with me, and I ended up only getting an 8 out of 10 on this lab. Not what I wanted, but also not the end of the world as well. And also, I just had so much other stuff to do this week that it was just not worth it for me to spend more time trying to debug my circuit. And now on to the last class of my day, which is my CPEN 211 lecture. This course is all about computing systems, as so far we've learned about Boolean algebra, combinational and sequential logic, and writing Verilog code. Now, for those of you who aren't in ELEC or CPEN at the moment, you may not know how absolutely f***ed this course is. The sheer amount of content that is covered in this course is equivalent to being drowned by a tidal wave each lecture. Also, the lecture slides look absolutely horrendous, the content is confusing, and the assessments are so unforgiving. I'm going to be so lucky if I even pass this course, and I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if I have to take this course again next year because I failed it. Oh goodness, I really needed to get that off my chest. Rant aside, in today's lecture we covered some concepts related to Verilog for finite state machines, non-blocking assignments, and iterative combinational logic. All concepts that, yet again, I still do not understand and probably won't understand until a day before the final exam. And honestly, the lectures are so uninteresting at some points that the people around me start playing some, sus games. Oh, but there is one good thing about CPEN 211. Two, actually. The first thing is when your actually works, which rarely ever happens for me. And the second thing is leaving class. It was quite rainy on my commute home, but in a way it did look quite cinematic. I'll let the shots play out for a bit. Once I got home, I unpacked all my stuff, ate dinner, cleaned myself up, showered, and then started doing some practice for my CompSci 259 lab quiz that I have on Friday. There were some practice quizzes on PrairieLearn that I used to study, which had some coding and theory questions. After doing a couple of practice quizzes, I ended up going to bed at around 10:20 p.m., thinking about all the stuff that I still had to do by the end of the week. So I guess this is what life is truly like in ELEC. Man, I don't know if you guys can tell right now, but it is absolutely pissing rain right now. It is so rainy. I guess this is what it's like living in Vancouver. Alright, it's Wednesday today, and my schedule for Wednesdays is exactly the same as on Mondays. CompSci 259 at 8 a.m., Math 253 at 11 a.m., Math 256 at 12 p.m., and Philosophy 211 at 1 p.m. But today, I did stay for a few extra hours to get some extra work done. I don't know what the deal is, but whenever I try to get work done at home, my productivity drops faster than a negative exponential function. This is why I usually like to get my work done while I'm on campus, and I will say that today was probably the best day of this week. The first lecture of today is Comp.Sci 259, and we continued covering stacks and queues in C, and what happens when you resize an array in different ways. And when I took a look around the class, that's when I realized that pretty much no one goes to lectures for this class anymore. Probably because A, it's at 8 a.m. in the morning, and B, the lectures are live streamed and recorded on Zoom. But I still go to lectures in person as an incentive for me to actually pay attention during the lectures. After the lecture was over, I had to make the long, wet, and rainy trek over to Kerner for my 2-hour study gap before Math 253. And thank goodness I was wearing my waterproof shoes, but my friend Trevor wasn't, and he was definitely suffering the whole way there. This time I went upstairs so that I could study in a less depressing area than the basement, and I pretty much just did some pre-studying for today's Math 256 lecture and some practice for my Comp.Sci 259 lab quiz on Friday. I'll let this time lapse play out for a bit because the clouds looked really cool in the background. Then it was time for my Math 253 lecture to start on Zoom, and in today's lecture we were using the gradient and directional derivative concepts that we learned last class to find the maxima and minima of functions with two variables. Pretty much just optimization from Calculus 1, but extended to 3 dimensions. Come to think of it, I actually learned a little bit of this in Math 100, which was really odd because I thought multivariable calculus was reserved for this course, as if Math 100 was not hard enough. I really don't want to have to think about that course ever again though. Anyways, I just want to say thanks to my friend Brooklyn for being my study buddy and keeping me accountable during those 2 hours. My next class was Math 256, and in today's lecture we continue discussing linear systems of first-order ordinary differential equations, or ODEs, and how to take second-order ODEs and turn them into linear systems of first-order ODEs. Because I had already done my pre-studying for this lecture, I was basically just eating my lunch in the middle of class and recording this footage. And after Math 256 was done, I had my last class of the day, which was Philosophy 211, in which we discussed Socrates' life and the practices that he preached. He was pretty much known for questioning people so much about what they thought they knew that he became disliked for exposing them of their lack of knowledge. And he ultimately got executed because of it, so maybe think twice before you try to correct someone next time. As mentioned at the start of the day, I stayed on campus for a few extra hours to get some work done, and by work, I mean starting to plan my essay for Philosophy 211 that is due in 2 days. I know, amazing time management indeed. I headed to the library in the Allard School of Law building to meet with a friend so that she could hold me accountable to actually get work done. And luckily, I did actually get some decent work done. For this essay, we were to choose a pre-Socratic philosopher that we had been studying in class, of which we were to interpret their ideologies and evaluate them. I chose Pythagoras to write about mostly because he has the most relevance to engineering with the well-known Pythagorean theorem and his fascination with numbers. Apparently, he also believed in vegetarianism, the immortality of the soul, and that numbers were the source of all things. I guess these are the views that you adopt when you move around so much, like Pythagoras did. Anyways, big thanks to my friend Bella for holding me accountable during this study session, otherwise I'd probably be starting the planning of this essay on Friday. Stepping outside after 3 hours of being inside, and it was still pouring rain outside, which made the commute home even more fun. But I will say that I have developed a new love for slow motion traffic shots in the rain, and it does make the rain ever so slightly more bearable and helps to pass the time while I'm waiting for the 29 bus to take me the rest of the way home. I got home at around 6:30, unpacked all my stuff, ate dinner, cleaned myself up, and then went to bed at around 9:30. Yeah, I know that's relatively early, but I've definitely been short on sleep over the last couple of days. I'd say that I was decently productive today, and I just hope that I can continue this for the rest of the week. Oh, and one last note, big thanks to my friend Hannah for providing the background music that you've been hearing for all of today. Her SoundCloud is linked in the description below if you want to check out more of her awesome music, and I've personally started listening to them during my study sessions, so yeah, go check her out. Random morning thoughts as I'm heating up my lunch, inspired by my friend's inquiry yesterday with his wet socks. If you put wet socks in a microwave, will they dry off? Alright, 2 more days left until the weekend, but I've got to get through Thursday first. My Thursday schedule consists of an Elect 201 lecture at 10 a.m., an Elect 201 lab at 1 p.m., and a CPEN 211 lecture at 3:30. Prepare yourself to see a lot of elect and circuit related stuff today. As usual for Tuesdays and Thursdays, I get to campus as if I have an 8 a.m. class just to get some work done in the morning. Today, I used the time to pre-build my circuits for today's Elect 201 lab, which I will talk more about later when I'm in my lab session. And I did some more practice for my CompSci 259 lab quiz, which is tomorrow. Surprisingly, even though I don't like doing circuit analysis in Elect 201, I actually really like building circuits on breadboards, which I did not expect to enjoy doing. There's just something about putting everything together on the breadboard that makes life feel like everything is alright, when in reality, it isn't. Also, I should really time-lapse more because the clouds in the background just look so freaking cool. It was then time for me to head to my Elect 201 lecture. In today's lecture, we were covering the basics of diodes, which pretty much only allow current to flow in one direction, but not in the reverse direction. Hopefully I don't offend any electrical engineers with that description. Even though diodes technically have a non-linear current voltage relationship, because we are excellent engineers, we can do some hand waving to simplify things as engineers do. For example, those really steep slopes on the current voltage graph, they look vertical enough, so why don't we represent them as vertical lines just to make it easier for ourselves? And that horizontal area looks like there is zero slope, so why don't we represent it as a horizontal line? That's what us engineers do, and that's the mindset behind everything that has been created by engineers today. How can we be as lazy as possible, but still make this work? After learning about how to be excellent engineers, I had a short 1-hour gap before my Elect 201 lab session. For these lab sessions, we are tasked with constructing 2 to 4 circuits and making measurements and observations using the tools we have at our disposal in the labs. Anyways, in this lab, we were tasked with using the Thevenin equivalence and superposition concepts that we learned in class to measure different quantities within our circuits. For each lab assignment, we get 2 lab sessions to work on it, so my partner and I got through about half of the lab assignment today and got our circuits checked by a TA. After my Elect 201 lab session, I had my last class of the day, which was CPEN 211. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I barely paid attention during this lecture. We were learning about arbiters today, but the only thing that I could remember about them was that they were in Halo or something. As I said, I really don't like this class. The only thing I did understand during today's lecture was the extremely basic binary addition that we briefly glossed over, and that CPEN 211 is the best place to watch others play Among Us in the middle of class. With that class done, it was time for me to commute home, and it was honestly a really nice evening with some hints of pink in the clouds. I'll let some of these shots play out for a little bit. Once I got home, I did not feel like doing any work at all, which in hindsight maybe wasn't the best idea, considering I had my ComSci 259 lab quiz tomorrow and my Philosophy 211 essay due tomorrow as well. But honestly, I really just wasn't feeling it and ended up just watching the new episode of season 2 of Loki that was released today. As you can probably tell from these last few days, I am the perfect example of a student you should not try to be like. After finishing that episode, I showered, cleaned myself up, and went to bed at around 10:15 p.m. Just one more day left of this week. Alright, we've made it to the end of the week, but there's one final boss battle before the weekend, and that is my Friday schedule, which happens to be my most brutal day of the week with 8 hours of classes in total, with 6 hours of them in a row. The bane of my existence, my Fridays, looks like this. A ComSci 259 lecture at 8 a.m., a ComSci 259 lab at 9 a.m., Math 253 at 11 a.m., Math 256 at 12 p.m., Philosophy 211 at 1 p.m., and an Elect 201 tutorial session at 4 p.m. Man, it is painful just to read that out, let alone actually experience it. First lecture today was ComSci 259, and we continued discussing stacks and queues, which are pretty much just other data structures that we can use in our code. I really wasn't paying much attention in today's lecture because I was much more worried about my lab quiz in the next hour, as I still do not understand asymptotic analysis and pointers as of writing this script 3 weeks later. Once the lecture was over, I booked it over to the ICICS building for my ComSci 259 lab session, which I basically only go to in order to do my lab quizzes for this course, which was today. I didn't film anything during the lab quizzes, so I wouldn't seem, suspicious, but it would not have changed the fact that I did pretty shit on this lab quiz, as it was auto-graded on the spot. I had no idea what was going on with my code for the coding question, as I knew how it was supposed to work, but things were just not working at all. And my brain basically shut off for the theory questions, so I lost quite a few marks from that. Alright, enough about that, just gotta keep grinding. Next class was Math 253, which was actually taught by our lecture TA for this course, and he was actually pretty good, all things considered. We were pretty much just doing some practice problems related to the optimization concepts that we learned last class, and it was actually pretty helpful, especially for doing the web work homework. But I never thought that I'd ever draw a cinnamon roll in a math class. Next up was Math 256, and I'm gonna be real with y'all, all I did during the lecture was eat my lunch and work on the homework assignment for this class due next week. I took the notes for today's lecture already, so I just used the time to get started on the insanely long homework assignment that we had. When I finished it a week later, it ended up being 10 pages long, and that was with me writing with the equivalent of a 0.25 millimeter pen on my iPad. But during today's lecture, we discussed the qualitative behaviors of some of the solutions to linear systems of differential equations. That was a mouthful. Next in my day was Philosophy 211, where we discussed a little more about Socrates and how he lived his life according to testimonials from the people who interacted with him. At this point in the day, and in the week to be honest, I was ridiculously tired and I still had not even started writing my Philosophy 211 essay yet. So pretty much during this lecture and in the 2-hour gap between this class and my last class of the day, I was just working on my essay, and by 3:45 p.m. I managed to write about 250 words in that time. Not a lot, but it was still progress in the time that I had. How many more do I have left? Like 1,300 more words and 8 more hours of my day.
Take out 5 hours.
3 more hours of my day to finish this. Well, gotta finish this later. How much percent? Can you do a quick calculation? What's 267 divided by 1500?
18%.
Let's go. 18% done, baby. Speaking of time, it was time for me to head to my last class of the week, which was my Elect 201 tutorial session. This time on Fridays alternates between Elect 201 and CPEN 211 tutorial sessions each week, but it's usually the time when midterms for these courses are held as well. Thankfully, there are no midterms this week and it's just a tutorial session. Our tutorial sessions are pretty much just pseudo lectures because our professor teaches them and everyone in our section is in the same tutorial session in a lecture hall. In today's session, we did some practice with diodes with some numerical examples that the professor worked through with us throughout the tutorial session. But I just have to say, and I probably speak for everyone who is in second year ECE right now, that having our tutorials and midterms at this late of a time on a Friday is really the worst idea that anyone could have ever come up with. Like, it's the end of the week, we're all tired and we all just want to go home. And subsequently, all of our attention spans drop really fast whenever we're in these tutorial sessions. I just hope this isn't like this in future years. After a very, very long 2 hours, it was finally time for me to head home after a really, really long day and week. I got home at around 7:15 or so, ate dinner, cleaned myself up, showered, and then began to grind away at my Philosophy 211 essay that was technically due in 4 hours. But there's something that I haven't told you guys yet. In our Philosophy 211 class, our prof offers a no penalty 48-hour extension for all major assignments in this course. And this essay falls within that category. And as much as I did not want to have to use it, I ultimately had to when it was nearing midnight and I still had about 500 words left to write. I also had work the next morning as well, so I kind of just accepted the fact that I needed to use the extension. And thank goodness that it existed. Anyways, that's pretty much a week of my life in second year electrical engineering at UBC. As always, gently tap the like button, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell to be notified whenever I release a new video. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video and a little sneak peek into my personal life, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.